is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing a project that I hope will maybe solve a problem or give some inspiration with really tiny beads. So when you get little tiny beads, are you ever kind of stumped at what to do to make them bold and really make a piece of jewelry that stands out even though the beads are really tiny? So I have an idea. This is my prototype for how this will look, and I'm going to go through the whole thing with you. This is super easy. Anybody could do this. I really would classify this as a beginner project. So I have taken crystals that are 3mm. I do have some donut beads to add texture, but I've gone down as small as 11/0 seed beads, and I have some 8/0 seed beads, and I've made use of some large hole beads and spacers and just small crystals, and done this really colorful, eclectic, very boho, just totally amazing bracelet. I absolutely love it. I just love the way that it turned out, and I want to do another one and maybe even a third one because I think these would be so beautiful stacked. So let me show you what went into this. You will see through the base of your beads a little bit, so I don't know if you can see what's peeking through. It is pink paracord. So this is what I used for the base of my bracelet, and there's a couple of tricks to working with that. I also have a little assortment here, and these are just from the craft store. I think you could also use like upholstery rope, like what upholsterers do piping with. It's just a plain white rope, and they sew a fabric tube around it for edging furniture when they do upholstery. But this is what I had on hand, and so really it's wonderful that paracord comes in so many different colors, because if you're going to do a colorful piece, it doesn't really matter. Just choose something that you love, because it will peek through a tiny bit, as you can see. Like, there are a few places where it's going to peek through. And of course, you can really take this design and run with it. So what I have on the side here is a little tray of tiny beads that I have. So if you get, you know, pretty much any of the bead boxes, Dollar Bead Club notoriously puts 2, 3, 4mm faceted check glass rounds. We get micro faceted gemstones. We get a lot of like really tiny smooth round drugs, 2, 3mm. We all get seed beads. I love my Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club. I get the seed bead rotation, and you know, I'm rotating that. But also, like, these are little vintage tiny little check glass coin beads. And you know, if you're not making petite jewelry and you want to make a bold statement, it can be challenging when you have like a little 2mm pressed glass bicone. We often get these little Orion stars. It's a little tiny check glass bead, and if you want to do something besides spacers with those beads, I think this is the perfect solution. So I'm going to show you what I did. I would say that the only trick to this, if you wanted to just do the wrap method and not use any other large hole beads, it might be easier, but I did want to kind of space out my small beads with some large hole beads. I just love the look, but the only trick I would say is the ends of the paracord, but it is a nylon cord. So I have a little piece here, and before I start a project, I always like to see what I have that's going to go on and off of my material and kind of play with the ends. So this is a little more than a bracelet length. So that'll be different for different people. And I would advise giving yourself some extra, because the ends of the paracord can be a little bit tricky, and you may mess up the end and need to cut some away when you're all finished with your making your beaded part of this bracelet. So what I have this side prepared, and this side was right off the end of the spool, so it's already melted, and that is pretty much the best way that I can think of. I mean, I think you could also use like some super glue and kind of pinch the ends, but what I do with the paracord is take my scissors and I cut a really, really sharp point, like a really sharp one, as sharp as I can get it. So it's like it's an angled cut, as you know, as angled as I can get it. And then I use one of my little lighters, a little fire starter, and I am just going to, for a moment, like put a flame to this, not for a long time because it does melt pretty fast. And I usually just keep a piece of plastic so I don't hurt my fingers, and I go a little bit at a time, kind of melting the end and pinching it into a point. And so, like I said, this is probably the trickiest part of this whole project, is just preparing your ends for the stringing. So it is nylon cord, and you can see that I have melted it. And for the like donut beads and these large hole spacers that I do want in my project, I'll have to pull my cord through those. And even these large hole Tibetan spacers, I really love those for my project too. So I'm just going to do this a few times until I have the end, you know, clean, pointy, not fraying. So, and you know, just be really careful not to burn your fingers. I just took an old plastic bag so that I can pinch it. And once it's melted, and you know, and I have it the way that I want, I can even come back with my scissors and cut the melted part, because then it's more solid if I need to. But now I can go back and kind of test and see, like some of the spacers, these are large hole, but they are a little challenging to get through. So I can kind of test how I did. And you know, I did pretty well, but I can still see that I have some part here that's not melted. So I may do that a couple of times, but I haven't had to do it a second time. So once I get it, you know, melted a little bit, I don't have to go back and do it. And it doesn't take much because, you know, it's just a shiny little nylon cord. So it doesn't take much. And I'm just going to make it, you know, as pointy for stringing as I possibly can. So let me show you what I did to finish the bracelet. So this here is just leather cord end caps that look like this, that you just would glue on to the ends of leather. But I had the idea of like using a kumi end cap. It's also a glue in, and this does, to me, kind of mimics the kumi beading, but without all the labor. So I kind of like that. But the ones that I have are pretty big. So what I'm thinking is that when I get my first like wrap going, that it might actually work. So I have them both out here. So when we get to that point, and if you wanted to go ahead and put an end cap on one end, you could, but I haven't done it that way. I have gone ahead and just, you know, created my bracelet first and then dealt with my ends at the end. So what I am using here, let me show you what else I'm using. And really you could use any beading thread that you have. This is 10 pound, which is overkill. And I just had this from years back in my stash, and that's what I'm using because that's what I had handy. But like I said, you could pretty much use anything that you wanted, and a nice firm big eye needle should do the trick. I have this really sad little bent up needle here that I'm going to start with. And so I'm going to come to this end that I was working on and just put my thread and needle through and just tie a knot. You're gonna put beads right on top of this, so this is not rocket science. Just, you know, get it secure. That's the only caveat, is just get it secure. So I'm gonna tie a couple of knots. Okay, and I'll just leave that little, make sure that it's on. I'll just leave that little tail for now, because as I said, I'm gonna bead right on top of this. And so what I'm thinking, since I may want to glue on the kumi ends for this particular bracelet, what I'm thinking is to start with some of these 8/0 seed beads. So I have an 8/0 seed bead here and an 11/0 seed bead, and I'm just going to string some beads on here doing a color and a metallic, a color and a metallic, until I have a little bit of length so that I can start wrapping. And I will show you what I did. This, if there is an exact science to this, I'm not aware of it. For me, it was to do a nice neat wrap and tack this down and move down the length of my bracelet. So let me get some beads on here. I love this little set of seed bead trays that I've found. As you can see, it's a set of two, a large and a small. And it just, a project like this, when you need multiple beads and tiny beads and stringing seed beads and small, like 2 and 3 millimeter beads, I just find it so effortless. So I just have a little start here. I can always add more, and I am going to start wrapping. And I will say, like most things, when you first start, there's not a lot of leverage. This is my first thing that I'm adding. So as you can see, it's, you know, maybe a little bit, I don't want to say challenging, because I really think anybody could do this, but you know, just to get everything tight. And again, it's not rocket science, because if something was loose, you could always run your needle back through. So I'm just going to get like a few wraps around and kind of see where my line of beads has ended up, and put my needle through the paracord at that point. So I'm going to guess that it's right about there. And I'm just going to come through like somewhere in the middle of my spiral or my coil that I made. And that's my first little tack. And if you, like I say, if it's loose, or if you need to go back and tack it down, you can go in between the beads and just do a little tack. But as you stack beads onto the paracord, each new spiral or each new thing that you thread on kind of reinforces the previous one. So it just gets better and better as you work on the design. And these are so fun. It just unfolds before your eyes. So the more that you string on, the prettier it becomes. And as you can see, I matched my seed bead really well to my paracord. I'm going to change colors. But for the end, that's kind of a nice, that when you look through the seed beads there, you don't really notice the paracord. So I'm just going to continue like tacking down like that. And I'm going to add some more. I'm going to do a couple more turns around my paracord. And I can actually pause here, and let's see if I wanted to glue my kumi on. See, that might actually work. I would trim this off. I would trim that part off. So that might actually work. I'll have the option. I think I'm going to have the option. I won't know till the bracelet is all done, but I think I'm going to have the option of this glue-in leather cord or my kumi cord. So then how I've been doing this, like I said, if there is an exact science, I'm unaware of it, but how I've been doing this is coming back around to where I stopped spiraling. Let's see, I want to tack this one down. And I've been running my needle through the last bead that I strung, so that when I string on more to continue coiling around, it looks like a continuous line. Does that make any sense? Let me see if, and like I said, I may glue the first row or two into my kumi end. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. And the start is always, you know, the start is always the most challenging. I found on my sample piece that the more I had on my cord, the more easy it became to add the next thing and the next thing. And really, I want to do like a stack of bracelets, but this is so fun. It's another one of those things that your bracelet length is just not enough. You feel like you want to keep going. So here, if you can see, that was my last bead. So I'm just going to put my needle back through that and then continue to pick up seed beads and, you know, for a couple more turns around. So let's just keep going. My next one would be a gold. I find this little tray is so amazing. And you know what? I think I'm going to switch to these now. that's the fun of this is, you know, it's really just a bold color mix. That doesn't mean you could do the whole thing in one color, or you could choose just 2 different beads and like do your entire bracelet like that. But I love this colorful mix and all the different textures to go from, you know, coin beads that are tiny and seed beads, and then to you know, whatever I have some Orion stars, I have some bicone beads, and I just love all the textures that it creates. That is gorgeous. So same thing about where my coil ended, I'm just going to tack it down onto my paracord. Just pull it tight. That looks amazing. And then I think I'm going to switch now to these little turquoise check glass drucks. These are so beautiful, but they are only 3mm beads. And what you see here in my tray is like things that were left over from boxes or from designs. And this little tiny amount of these 3mm smooth rounds was just left over from something. And so I went through my small bead collection and just put here on the tray. This little collection here is leftover 3mm check glass faceted rounds in several colors, and I just created my own little colorful mix and dumped them all right there. So it's a really great way to use up little bits of tiny beads as well and make something that's really consequential and bold, even though the beads are tiny. The same way. And what happens is you can, when you're spiraling like this, you can, I'm going to go in this direction, you can turn the paracord. And especially after you get some beads on, you can twist your paracord as you wrap. And so right about where that ends, I'm going to do the same thing. Just come through the cord and tack it down. And so what I've found in tacking it down is just to be careful that I'm not pulling my spiral line of beads, you know, out of whack, if that makes sense. Because as I said, and as you can see, as you add beads, you're really holding the previous ones in place. So I'm just tacking, and I'm going to work my way back to where I have ended this little line of beads, and just come out where I want to start again. And so, as I said, you could like do your entire length just spiraling and tacking, but I really love the effect of putting some large hole spacer beads, some crystal beads in between. So I really love that effect. Like, I'm just going to push that one down, and I'm going to, you know, kind of run my thread underneath, come out where I want to start my next little group of spiral beads, and just pull it tight. Isn't it beautiful? I haven't done very much, and I already think it's beautiful. And then I'm just going to decide what my next color is going to be, and I think I'll go for a yellow bicone. And I really like the gold 11O seed beads as a spacer in between, but on my first bracelet I didn't space everything with gold, and you could mix gold and silver and copper with this. I mean, you could really have fun playing with the little beads and the patterns. And same thing with the little bicone beads. Just wrap them around the paracord and just spiraling toward my empty cord. And I do like a little back stitch to, you know, kind of like attach it. And I love the effect of this. But I really like mixing up the textures. So I'm going to take a large hole Tibetan spacer now and feed that on. And I think I'm going to go into a red donut bead and make a little group here. Gorgeous. Of gold spacers and glass donut beads in red. Okay, and when I do that, I just have to run my needle back through the cord and come out where I'm going to start stringing again. And I also had out here, just to try, I have these little Monties. If you don't know what that is, a Monty is a little prong set crystal, and it has 2 channels that crisscross on the back of it. And I put those out here too because they're so tiny, and I may want to do those. I think next I'm going to go to some green faceted check glass bicones. I think these are 4mm. And honestly, this is the largest that I would do on paracord. If you spiral any larger than 4mm, the scale just isn't right for the size of paracord. You can also vary your amounts that you're stringing on. So like with the little bit larger bead, I'm only going to string on enough to give me 2 turns around the paracord, and then I'm going to switch back to a smaller bead or something else. And just again, wherever that bead, about where it's ending, put my needle through to tack it down and just, you know, pull it tight. And a little back stitch. Just be careful when you're tacking down that you don't loop around your paracord and, you know, distort everything. And, you know, you really can't mess this up, but if you didn't like something, you can always take your needle off the end and just pull it out, you know, before you continue on. But I actually do like that. And I think next I'm going to try one of these. Let's see if I want to do this pink one. These thread on the paracord really easily, these little glass spacers. That's beautiful. And once again, just run my needle through so that I'm coming out the other side, and I can choose my next thing. Okay, and then with the Orion beads, I just created a little pattern with my seed beads that I started with and spacing everything out with one of my gold seed beads. And as you can see, I've used my blue donut beads and done a little bit larger section of those, and it's just looking great. As I said, the more that you do, the prettier it looks. And once you have some beads on here, wrapping and tacking down your strands of, you know, pattern becomes a lot easier. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, I'm coming to the end, and I can see that I'm going to need more thread. So I'm just going to poke my needle through here and just tie off the same way that we started and add in some more thread, and so that I can finish doing a couple of more coils. And like I said, I'm leaning towards gluing on the kumi ends onto this. So I'm going to finish with something like maybe a seed bead, something small where I can put a row or so inside my kumi end when I finish it. And you can also do these a little bit shorter than, let me show you my sample. You can also do them a little shorter. Like I could have stopped here on this bracelet, and you can finish the length that you need with jump rings or a toggle clasp. Like you can really, I got my length pretty good on this. It's maybe a little bigger than I normally wear, so I could have actually done a little less beading, but you can adjust your finished length with jump rings and whatever clasp you choose. And I haven't even chosen a clasp for this one yet. So let me add in some thread here. Okay, I am at the end of this bracelet, and as always happens, I have made some design decisions. I did not care for the way the kumi end fits like this. My seed beads aren't going inside, and I just felt like it was going to be precarious. So I glued one of those leather end cords onto this end, and I have finished with seed beads, and I'm going to do the same thing on this end. And the other thing is, I do not mind seeing a little bit of my paracord. That's why I chose one of my favorite colors and a color that is in my patterns. But I am going to go back through to spaces like this where I feel like I'm seeing a little bit too much. I'm just gonna pick up another bead, another seed bead, and just fill it in and I'm just gonna run my cord just like that. Whoops, I did it backwards. I wanted the seed bead to look like a continuation of my spiral. So I gotta go the other way. Seed bead, and then a gold seed bead, and then a pink seed bead. And I'm just gonna do that just to fill in this space a little bit, another gold seed bead. And I'm going to run my needle down and just check for anything that I might want to further tack down, or any space where I think there's a little bit too much paracord showing. I'm just going to do that just like this, just run my needle down through, and I will attach the same clasp and just continue like that. So it's really easy to fill in, as you can see. If you have any funny little gaps, like I don't like this one right here, so I will add in some more beads there. But I am going to start another bracelet, and what I decided to do so that I can use my kumi end is I tied a knot in the paracord, and I melted it just the way that I did when I was doing a point, and I kind of squished it with my pliers, and now I feel like I can glue my kumi end on, like fit it in there and glue it on, and I feel like it will be more stable and prettier when I start coiling beads around the paracord. So I'm going to do a third bracelet, which I wanted to anyway because I think they're so beautiful stacking. So let me get this tidied up here, and I just use a little bit of gel Loctite super glue on the ends and push this little glue in leather end cord all the way down into my seed beads as tight as I can get it. I'll let it dry, and then I'm going to add a magnetic clasp with some of these stainless steel diamond cut jump rings, and this bracelet will be done. And I'm going to start another one, and I'll come back and show you how this looks with the kumi end on it. I wanted to do another one because, you guys, I did all of this and I still have so many small beads, so many spacers, it's so fun. It's just so free form and such happy, joyful beading. So I'm going to pause here, charge the camera battery, and I'll be right back. Guys. So while the camera battery was charging, I glued my ends on this bracelet that I did with you, and I put this pave magnetic clasp on this one, and it's just absolutely stunning. These are the happiest pieces of jewelry. They look like candy. I just love it. This is the one that I did a couple of days ago, and then this is how I finished the one that I was working on while the camera battery was charging. So I decided to put a plain magnetic clasp on this one because my kumi ends are a little bit decorative, and it worked really well to start out with a knot and melt it a little bit and glue my first kumi end in, and then just do my beading, do my spiraling, layer on my discs and my donut beads. And when I got to my desired length, I wanted to finish up with seed beads, so I just have these little baby pink ones here, and then I tied a knot on the end and like worked it down right close to these seed beads. I melted it a little bit, and then with super glue I put my kumi end on. So this one has not been drying for a really long time, so I'm not going to pull on it too much. And I just wanted to tell you two more things to add quality to this project. I am going like right here where I had to tie a knot. I left a little bit of a long tail so that I could find my knots again. And everywhere where I had to add in thread or where I tied a knot, I used my GS Hypo Cement. It is a beader's glue, and it's made for knots. And so what's cool about this is that as you move a bracelet and the movement tugs, this doesn't dry crunchy hard. It dries so that it's secure, but it moves a little bit with the knots. It's a little bit of a pain. The precision tip is wonderful for directing the glue where you want, but you have to get the pin back in right away because the glue keeps coming out. And then the only other thing, some of you are already probably guessing what I'm going to do. I always put my anti-tarnish coating on everything. I'm just going to take a little, I save little plastic anything at all that I have that's plastic, and I am going to go the entire length of my bracelet wherever I have used metal and just brush a thin layer of this Permalac on top of it. I use the semi-gloss, and so I can brush it even over crystals and things that I want to sparkle. It is also available in matte, and there are certain applications where you may want that. You know, I don't need it on this. And the other thing is my seed beads, all of my gold seed beads are the galvanized Duracoat. So whenever I'm using metallic seed beads, I always try to spend that little bit of extra money to get that quality, because with the galvanized Duracoat, my gold seed beads here will not darken. They won't, you know, the metallic look will not rub off with time. So that's just something that I always do. But I just brush everything that is metal because it's fashion jewelry. And so there's nothing as good as precious metals, but this Permalac coating is pretty close. I've had things for like 10 years after I made them and coated them that I've worn a lot, and they still look good. And so, like, as you can see, these little crystal spacers here, I just brush the Permalac right over the crystal, right over the metal, like over everything. And I'll come right here where I used my Tibetan disc spacers and just get that little brush in there. You know, you don't want to be sloppy, but you don't have to be super neat with it either, because it dries totally clear, and if you accidentally brush a bead, you don't even see it. So it's like easier than polishing your nails. So that is what I do, and this is a great thing to add to a listing. If you sell on a website, to be able to type in your listing that all of your findings have an anti-tarnish coating. That sets your work apart from other people who are just making fashion jewelry. It might be beautiful and handmade, but you know, people that are spending money, they think about how long something is going to last and what the quality is. So I even have these beautiful little pearl disc spacers, and the base of them is gold plated, but just plated. So I just get my brush in there and go around everything. So I am going to finish coating my 2 bracelets that I made today, and this dries within moments. A lot of times by the time I'm finished talking, this is dry. So I'm going to finish this and take the final beautiful pictures of my pieces here, and I will put them at the end of the video. Check the description box if you're interested in any of the products that you saw me use. If I know where I got them, I will always spend a lot of time on my description boxes, so that if you're trying to do one of my designs, or if you were inspired by it, you don't have to go crazy looking for supplies if you don't already have them. So I thank you so much for watching. I hope everybody is safe and well and having fun on your beading mats, and I hope you were inspired by making a bold statement with teeny tiny beads today. Thanks a lot, everybody. Ciao, friends.